Welcome, everybody, to the Bully Stories podcast brought to you by The Kindness Knot, a nonprofit dedicated to anti hate, anti bullying, and an all inclusive community. The Bully Stories aims at bringing awareness to bullying and give a platform for former victims and ex bullies to share their stories. We hope that these stories will help prevent future occurrences and help those who are currently experiencing bullying. I'm your host today, Derek Cortez, and this is my host.
Gaby Hernandez. Hey, y'all.
And today we have a very special guest joining us to share their story. Today we're joined by Yolanda Magaña. She's here to share her experience as a victim of bullying, and we'll dive into how she overcame it and how this has impacted her life. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
Have you ever done anything like this before?
No.
First time for everything?
I'm excited for what you guys are doing, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So thank you.
Awesome. So let's just kind of give our audience a little bit of background about yourself. Can you tell us a little about where you're from and what your childhood was like?
Sure. So I'm Yolanda, everyone. Hello. And I grew up in Livermore, California. So when Livermore was smaller, a little more like Patterson at the time. And I lived in the small area of Livermore that's called Springtown. So it's still part of Livermore. Everyone would get that kind of confused. It is Livermore, but it's just kind of on the other side of Livermore. And it was kind of known to be like maybe the white side of town.
Really?
And we'll get into that a little more. But yeah, I come from a loving family of divorced and remarried parents. People used to always say we should be on the Donahue show because we all got along. It was very odd. I have 6 sets of grandparents, and Christmases were awesome. So I'm the oldest. I have 2 younger sisters that are 8 years apart from me. And I'm one I lived with. The other one was from my stepmom and my biological father. And the one I lived with is from my biological mom and my stepdad. So I'm literally like the only one, like I'm kind of the only child, but
You're one of a
had
kind.
these 2 half sisters. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was kind of your typical childhood, really, really nice and nice, town to grow up in. So
Cool.
yeah.
So, what is it that you do today? What do you work? You study, or
What don't I do today, Gaby? So right now currently I am on the host house board of directors here in Patterson. So I help with that. It used to be just men's homeless shelter, but now it's going to be anyone homeless type of shelter. So that's really nice. And then I also work part-time for the city of Patterson Recreation. And
wow.
I work with the teens. That's kind of my jam. So I work with the Youth Action Commission. I formerly was on a Youth Action Commission in Livermore. So it's kind of nice to have that full circle. And then I also spearhead a homeschooling group. It's based out of Tracy, but we have families from all over. So we have about 200 families that we serve. And so we do classes and prom and all this stuff, all the things in public school, but in just a homeschool setting. So I'm very busy.
I would love to see your schedule.
Yeah. Oh, you don't. I
just
have to
filled.
look hour by, like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Yeah.
So your heart is in the community. You're just
Absolutely.
a servant to
Yeah.
the community.
And you'll see quickly through this story, it came from being bullied.
Really?
Yeah. This is not the path that I chose. It chose me. Yeah.
I love it because some people, they can get a completely different life path from the same experience that you had. So it's going to be interesting to see how we're going to go into that story and how you actually developed into this person that's created something positive out of this. So, you know what? How would you describe the way that you solve problems? Are you like a more patient and even tempered, or are you more aggressive and you just spearhead those problems?
I guess it depends on the situation.
She's like a little
I'm
bit
a
of
little
both.
of both. Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm, even keel type tempered. when it comes to like, okay, level-headedness, how are we going to tackle this? What's the logical, way? I always like to have plan A, B, and C, just in case things don't work out. But as far as like getting in there and just getting it done, I'm very impatient. So I'm like, let's just grab the bull by the horn and get it done. Like I don't like being told no. I will find a way around it. Um, so yeah, a little bit of both.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. Me and Gabby, we always talk because I'm more of the technical person. I always like to chart every step of the way, and then Gabby's just kind of let's
Let's
do
just
it and
do
we'll
it. Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
you're,
Along the way.
it's good that you're in
Yeah.
the middle because you're a little bit
A
of
little
both of
bit,
us.
little bit of both. Yeah.
Okay, so let's not keep the audience waiting. Let's start at the very beginning. Can you tell us about your experiencing with bullying and when did it start?
Okay, so it was so funny because before I told my kids I was coming, and my oldest goes, "Oh, great, you get to relive your trauma, Mom." I'm like, "Oh, I'm happy that you see that." But no, I'm totally happy, and it is therapeutic actually to talk about it. So it actually stemmed. So I again going back to that white side of town. Believe it or not, Livermore is primarily Caucasian, and it was at the time. It's like about 89%, and then you got like a 9% Hispanic or Latino, and then everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in Springtown, which was, I was maybe one handful of Latinos in my elementary school. And so when I went to downtown, to basically downtown to a junior high, which is sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, it was like a culture shock for me. I was like, "Whoa, there's more Mexicans here. They look like me." And so it's actually the very first day of school. I was so excited. I mean, it's already you're, preteen going into a new school with tons of new people. So you're totally like already nervous, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your heart's pumping and stuff. And I was just so ecstatic because you get to a point in your teens where I feel like you're really trying to know yourself and where you are, where you fit in this little world of yours. Um, and so I was going down the hallways and I was like, oh my gosh, these girls look just like me. They have beautiful long black hair. Mind you, I grew up, with more Caucasians, my white friends. And so I was really the only one. I stood out. I was tan. I had the pitch black hair, the bigger lips, the more voluptuous body. And so it was just different. I just ended up feeling like, wow, I kind of look different than my friends. You get to a point where you start to see that. So I was really excited. All the girls looked like me. And then all of a sudden, I'm noticing they're giving me a lot of dirty looks. And I'm like, oh, that maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just not me. I was just so naive, and meet someone behind me and stuff. And then before you know it, at the end of the day, I'm getting shoulder checked in the hallways. And oh, naive me. Sorry, excuse me. I didn't know that was like purpose.
Oh wow.
And before you know it, this as the days went on, that got more prevalent. My hair would be pulled. My backpack would be like pushed off to the side pretty hard. I started to try to get tripped. Then you start hearing the name calling, and then you're like, wait a minute, this is actually directed to me. And it kind of, progressed from there.
So it was more of a gradual increase. It wasn't just like everyone just hated you right from the start.
No, it's gradual. As I started to make more friends and know more people, you start to look at boys and date. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize certain people were off limits.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize because, again, I came from a smaller school and my mom was the yard duty at the school. My grandpa was the custodian. Everyone knew me. I knew everyone, and we just didn't have those type of issues in our school until junior high. And I started seeing, oh, the little Mexican, kids that were there, they stick to themselves. And then you've got Mexicans who were from Mexico who speak little Spanish. That's a clique. You have whites, athletic, that's a clique. You have your more rocker type. You have your, not to be rude, but like your nerdy type of kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have your Mexicans who were born and raised here. So basically, those were the norteños,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have the sureños,
Mm-hmm.
and you have little coconut me, brown on the outside, but all white in the inside. So I don't really fit in anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I started to, quickly see that I had to pick a side, you know, and because they already labeled me as white, um, I certain people, but I liked certain guys and they liked me, and I didn't think there was an issue with it, but apparently there was. Um, and it just started progressively, getting worse, getting worse. Um, and at the time, the teachers really didn't know how to process it. I don't think they had ever had such a bad bullying case.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the times it was like, well, Yolanda, maybe you looked at them wrong. Maybe I did something that provoked that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I didn't. I made sure that I wasn't doing anything because I wanted to be friends with them. They looked like me. Like I wanted to be a part of that, of all of that. And so I was just really caught off guard. And then before you know it, the one instant that really made it from a bullying to this is something more like assault and things. There was about 10 of them surrounded me by my locker with scissors in their hand. I had really long hair. It was the early 90s, so it was the
Yes,
poof and
yeah.
everything. And I started doing that. So they started threatening, we're going to cut your hair off. We're going to cut your face so the boys don't look at you anymore. And we're going to teach you a lesson.
Wow.
And if it wasn't for the most popular guy in school, like he was it. I was in 6th grade, he was in 8th grade, and he was just it. And he came over and he swooped me up and he said, "Not today, girls." And he took me right into the office and allowed me to call my mom to come and get me. And from there, it started progressively becoming I have binder full of police reports and restraining orders, and so the bullying escalated.
Well, so you actually had like a knight in shining armor, basically.
Absolutely. Every time, if I do see him, I haven't seen him in years since, a couple of years after high school, I always call him that. I mean, he literally, if it wasn't for him, I was sure they were going to mess me up.
Mm-hmm. So the tipping point for you was basically when they had just ganged up on you with scissors in their hands. Was there ever a time before that where you're kind of like, maybe this is something else? This isn't a coincidence that they're just all going after me.
Yeah. I started saying, like I said, I was like, okay, they're not shoulder checking the other girls.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing all of these other things. Because the hallways are, between classes, it gets pretty packed. It gets a little busy, crammed. So I kept thinking, well, maybe it's just a coincidence. And then there were days where it wasn't packed. And they were coming out of their way to do it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay. And then the nasty notes in the locker started happening. Them just being more vocal to me in the hallways. I started realizing it was
So this
towards
did
me.
increase over time. It didn't just stop right there.
Oh, no.
Wow.
It didn't stop until I've got stories. I mean, it didn't stop till I was 20.
Oh, wow. Well
mean-
past the high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. So what other story can you walk us through? What was your day to day at school? How did you feel like before you're going to school, and how did you deal with that?
I could feel like the butterflies and the sickness in my stomach now when I think about it. I was straight A student, honor roll all the time. I started not being able to sleep. Nightmares, just constant worry. People actually used to think that my close family and friends thought I was bulimic at a time because when I would eat, I would have to rush to the bathroom. I couldn't keep it down. I had ulcers. The teacher started, wondering what's going on, Yolanda. Why your grades are dipping. You can't seem to focus. It was physical with me. The worry and the anxiety. It got to the point they started crank calling me. So I had to have a tap on my phone
Really?
to prosecute them. I had to have a paper trail. So the police, put that on my phone. So I've got police reports about that. And after that, they would start leaving. It wasn't just crank calls anymore. They would say things. They would leave very threatening messages. I'm 8 years older than my sister, so she was younger at the time. And they would say things like, "We're gonna, you know, shoot your mom in front of you. We're gonna drag your sister up and down behind the car. We're gonna do torturous things to you." And so my little sister would hear that. She's third grade or so, and she didn't want to sleep in the room anymore because there's windows in the room that they could shoot at.
Yeah.
And so there was a bathroom in the middle of our house that didn't have any windows to the outside. It was in the middle of the house. And one day I remember going in to get ready for school, and she was sleeping in the bathtub because she was so scared.
Wow.
And so it got really bad. And again, the teachers were kind of just taking it nonchalantly. And that was very frustrating.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, here, I don't know. They're like, well, it's just Livermore. It's just, and I'm like, yeah, we're in this affluent city, but you still have problems. These teens have parents who have rap sheets, who have done things. So how you can't just turn a blind eye. A lot of the officers at the time too said the same thing. They'd come and take reports, and they would blame me. Well, what did you do to make them hate you so much? And I'm like, walk down the hall? Like, I don't know.
You like can't explain it.
I can't explain it. And I said, if you go ask them, I would love to know. And so it took a lot of us advocating for myself with the school and with the police in order for them to do anything. And then it went to my freshman year, and now I'm in high school. So, I mean, you have junior high, right? So you went from elementary to junior high, but now you're in high school. So you have like 4 or 5 junior highs going into one high school. So now you have more of their cousins, more of their friends, and older now, all the way up to, seniors. And so it escalated. I was terrified every day. I'd have to put on a smiley face and act like everything's okay. But I was dying inside. It was torture. I ended up becoming freshman homecoming princess, and word got out that they were going to, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Carrie.
Oh.
So basically they wanted to do something like that to me. And so with our high school, we used to do a parade around the football field. And so you're all in these nice cars with, prince and princess for each year. And word had gotten that they were going to throw things at me during the parade. So I would be totally embarrassed and stuff. I was more scared of getting shot or stabbed. I could care less if you throw eggs or whatever at me. Like, I don't care,
You just wipe it off.
Right, exactly. I don't want to be physically hurt. So some of my family members, because again, it was like pulling teeth to try to get the school to take this serious. And so there were some family members that decided to stay out of the entrance, and they knew who they were. So they stopped them and they said, empty your pockets. They did. And they found all kinds of stuff that they were going to do.
Wow.
And so, and I didn't want to go through with it, but my longtime friend who was won as Prince, big football star, had said, don't worry, Yolanda, I got you. Like, I'm going to be right next to you. I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. I got you. And I was like, well, okay. And then I had extra security, the school resource officer, the truant officer, my uncle, walk around the car with me around the field to make sure I was okay.
That's a very good transition to my next question. What was your support group like? Who were the people that you felt like you can talk to, or how did you find them?
Family. My family. My friends, a lot of them were white. So they were, and they were very, the athletic, they were a little more naive, so they didn't really even know what was going on. They just kind of saw things, and they're like, "Why are they being like that with you,
Like,
Yolanda?"
that's kind of weird.
I don't know. I guess felt like I had to protect them. Like I didn't want them to be
A part of it.
yeah.
Okay.
And so I kind of ended up. I still had a lot of friends, but in high school, obviously, you meet a lot of newer friends. I kind of gravitated, and they kind of gravitated, I guess, towards each other. A lot of I have black friends in high school, and it was just like they were safe. No one messed with them. They were well respected, all athletes and stuff. And so I just felt safe with them, because again, I was too Mexican. Wasn't Mexican enough for either side click, but then I was a little too brown for the whites now. And so I was like, okay, they just welcomed me. And so we just, hit it off. And then I was, told I was whitewashed. I'm an N lover. I don't like saying that word. And all these mean things. And I'm like, what is, like, aren't you supposed to be friends with everyone? Like, but they're like, no, you stick with your kind and that's it. And that was really hard for me to understand because I wasn't raised that way. So family, absolutely number one. I could not have done it without them. Because again, a lot of my friends didn't really know the depth of what I was going through.
Yeah. Not a lot of people can relate to who you are because in that area it's a little bit of everything but what you are.
Yeah.
Right.
And honestly, like a lot of the elders I was so fortunate to have good mentors. So my freshman year that summer, at the fair, I had finally gotten jumped. So this whole time I had made it through not getting jumped, right?
Really?
It was just torment at, daily threats and things like this and the crank calls. And that stuff was torturous, but I had made it that far without getting jumped. And summer fair, out with friends, having fun. And here they are. And they're rolling deep. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's had to have been like 20 of them. And here I am with 3 of my friends. And I'm like, and like the most innocent friends, and I'm like,
Oh, they weren't like, oh, I got you, girl.
No, they were not down. Like they were not ever. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so they corner me. I push my friends away and I tell them, go get help. Something's going to happen to me. Not going to be okay. Cause I literally thought I was going to die. Like this is it. They're going to get me. I'm done. Because mind you, building up to this, they never shot at my house, but they would drive by and rev their engines and
just intimidate,
just to know, so I know that they can. So that was pretty scary. And so here I am, I'm getting jumped, because no one was taking me seriously. My mom had actually given me a small blade. It was one of those, like a CD cutter. They're very tiny, like a little bit of your pinky nail, just to protect myself, because we felt like we were not getting any protection from anywhere. So I didn't have support system at school with the administration. I didn't have the police support. And so she said, if something were to happen, you need to protect yourself. You need to come home to me. And I said, okay. So when they jumped me, I just closed my eyes. I, put my head in my arm and just started swinging with the other, not knowing if I was hitting anyone. I was just
survival
getting
mode.
prepared to be stabbed. And I ended up hurting one of them really bad. I had cut her face really bad. I didn't know this until actually one of the Carney guys had pulled me off, and which is more disturbing. There was sheriffs there and they were watching the whole thing. They didn't stop it. I guess they didn't think it was like serious. And when they finally did, I saw her and I clammed up. I wouldn't talk to anyone until my mom got there, and the sheriffs were like, you have, they thought I was like a thug, and started reaming my mom. My mom brought the folder of police reports and said, she's a victim. You have the wrong girl. Where is the other girls? And that's when, and then as soon as she walked in, I just lost it. Mom, I heard her. Oh my God. Oh my God, I heard her. And I'm so sorry. And they're like, whoa, like she was just playing Miss Hard Girl right now.
Yeah.
And they go, and so when they started going through the reports, they're like, oh, this has been going on for years. And she's like, what are you supposed to do? If this was your daughter, what would you tell her to do? And so here I am fighting for my life in court because the judge tells me I want to make an example out of you. And I'm like, what? So if it wasn't for my teachers, sending my report cards, writing letters of recommendation, we had business owners, because again, my family is very well known in Livermore. We had those connections. If it wasn't for those letters, and that the judge even told me, if it wasn't for these letters, I'd make an example out of you. And so I got probation. But here I am, homecoming princess, fighting to stay out of jail for protecting myself. Because of this bully thing escalated. They later, let's see, was my end of my sophomore year, beginning junior year, the school resource officer pulled me aside and said, we can't protect you anymore. These girls have a green light on you. And I was like, what's a green light? Like, I don't understand. They said they have a hit on you. They're going to take you out, and it's going to initiate now. So this girl, what was just girls, ended up being like a girl gang. And so to get initiated, they had to take me out.
Oh, wow.
And so my mom's like, well, you're the cops. You're supposed to be protecting her. And they said, unfortunately, we can't do anything. We suggest you move. And I'm like, what? So it wasn't feasible for us financially to move. Although contrary to what they thought of us being rich, because we were on the white side of town, we were not rich. We were paycheck to paycheck. And so my mom pulled me out of public school. I did independent study. I turned my paperwork in the evening once everyone was closed. I went in and worked that out with the principal. I made a rumor that I moved to up north with my cousins.
How did you start the rumor?
I just told all my friends, I'm so sorry, I have to move. This is getting out of hand. And then when I would talk to them I'd be like, oh, I got to go. It's long distance, So I'd hang up, and then I would only go out, say every other weekend, like go to the grocery store or whatever with my mom. And if it was a small town, so people would see me, they go, oh my God, Yolanda, you back? And I'm like, no, I'm just visiting for the weekend, So I did that for a year. I lived as a prisoner in my own home.
Wow.
And then I couldn't take it anymore. I started having thoughts of suicide. I knew that wasn't an option just because I did not want to do that to my sister and my mom, or the rest of my family. And so something just clicked, and I started wanting to fight. And I said, you know what? No, and not in a physical way. I was like, I'm going to use my voice. So I started going to school board meetings. I started going to city council meetings. And I got the attention of the mayor and the chief of police. And newspapers started calling me and doing, reports and things. And I just said, you know what, if I'm going to die, because that's what I really thought they were going to kill me eventually, I want everyone to know who it is and who did it. And I want to make change so my sister doesn't have to grow up in this same environment. I want people to start taking it seriously. So we had truant officer was hired within the school district. Different policies and gang policies were put in place. I started becoming a member of the youth commission in Livermore to make change. I was instrumental in starting a youth center because I thought, well, if they had something to do, maybe they would leave me alone. Maybe if they had, maybe their home life wasn't the best. If they had somewhere, people that could mentor them like I got, they'd have, they just would leave me alone and not do things. So I started working with nonprofit agencies. I did volunteer work for a gang officer that worked locally, and he kind of took me under his wing and taught me everything I know about gangs. and said, you can make a change. You know, you're a minor, but you can make a change.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. We put on Livermore's first multicultural festival, because again, I thought, if it's okay to be different, it's okay not to fit your typical cultural group,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we should be being respectful, and if we're educated on other people's cultures and stuff, maybe we'll be more loving and kind to people. So we started that, and I just felt like I needed to speak and have a voice. And once I
Yeah.
found that my voice, it was I didn't even look back. I felt more empowered.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't scared anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and again, like I said, this path kind of chose me, because I wanted to go off and work at Marine World with the big cats. I wanted to work with the lions and the tigers, and then I just started doing all the civic engagement stuff, and that went into the law enforcement, because I felt that, you know, the chief at the time had welcomed me into a meeting and said, "What can we do?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this happening? Like, what can we do to help you?" And we started working together, and then that got me into law enforcement. And I thought, well, if I can get in there and make change within
Mm-hmm.
the department, and get them to realize, even though this is a, you know, affluent white community, we still have our problems. You know, we still have sectors that need work, that are overlooked. So that kind of led me into my law enforcement career, and I later ended up being hired with Livermore Police Department for 11 years as a community service officer, working with at-risk girls
Wow.
who were on the border of that gang lifestyle. And I
Mm-hmm.
was able to mentor them and show them, hey, you can go to college. You can, there's more to the world than your block.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yes.
you've got college, you've got traveling, you have the world ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't look at just right here in your little
Expand your horizons.
expand. And so that was so fulfilling and healing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so it's been a ride.
Yeah. No, that's a like your story is amazing. Like because a lot of people in your same exact position, they would have maybe taken a more physical route, and then they might have, not had a voice because they would have been locked up or something else, or
Mm-hmm.
even worse, 6 feet under.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you actually became the opposite of that, and you created those systems to where you became the support that you needed at that time
Yes.
to other girls. That's wonderful. So at the end of the day, how did the issue get resolved? Or was there a time where you're just like, okay, it's finally over?
No. So I ended up making it. Uh, I left my junior year, was like prisoner in my own home type thing, playing it, like I wasn't even living there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I couldn't take it again. I was like, no, that's it. I need to get back in. And so I was able, because I started doing independent study, I love to learn. I love to learn. And so my mom says, well, you can take college classes while you're in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. So I had 2 years of college before I graduated high school.
Wow.
And because I had all those extra credits, they said, well, if you come back to public school, you can be done in the first semester. And so I said, okay, well, I'll do that if I can graduate with my class. Because these are my friends that I grew up with, like since kindergarten, and I'm like, I want to graduate with my friends. And so he said, okay. So I felt I was in a good place to go back. And it was only for like 2 classes in the morning, and then I was out of there. So I felt safe enough to do that. And so, yeah, so I graduated, kind of early, but I went back, graduated with my class. I'm sorry, what was the question?
So how did you get it resolved, or
Oh,
when
yeah,
was
yes.
the issue
Yeah.
resolved?
So then even after high school, I ran into the girl who I ended up hurting.
Oh wow.
I mean, it was a small town.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Patterson, it wasn't, it was a little bigger, but it was still smaller at the time. And I went in, I think what was that? It was the record place. oh my gosh, I'm going to totally age myself right now. It wasn't a Radio Shack, but it was one store she worked at. And I went in, she saw me, and I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. She went and she keyed my car.
Oh wow.
And I was like, are you serious right now? And I ended up getting jumped later on too. I thought maybe I could make it to a party. Granted, I couldn't go to football games anymore. I couldn't go to basketball games. I couldn't do any of the things normal high schoolers do, because of the safety issue. So even going to the store was like, you're chancing it. And so this one time I thought, oh, well, it was not to be mean, but it was like a nerdy type of party. I'm like, there's no way, like, I'm totally going to be safe there. Like, no one's going to be there. It's going to be like that group and stuff. So I'm fine. I go, kid you not, they were all there when I walk in. I go, what? And it was because they knew that was my side of town. So that I had a high probability of going.
Wow.
But I wasn't going to go. Like, my friends dragged me. And I was like, okay, fine. And so I went and I thought, oh my gosh. So I go in and they pushed my friends. I was with two guys that brought me, and they were older. So my mom felt comfortable me going with them. They pushed them out, slammed the door, and locked it. So they had to run around the house to try to get back in to me to help me. But by then they had grabbed me. There was a staircase and girls were holding me down, and then they were just beating the crap out of me. And that was when the nightmares like became worse, because it was really bad. I didn't recognize myself the next day in the mirror. So, and I thought again, oh my God, this is it. They're going to stab me. I'm going to be, dead. But they didn't, thank God. And so it just kind of, it didn't really resolve itself until I started becoming more active and speaking out about it. And then they're like, well, wait a minute, she's in the newspapers now. She's on our channel 30. She's talking about this stuff. Like we're going to get caught. We're going to look bad. And then when I started becoming more active in the police department and in the city, I started getting the help from the police department. They're like, okay, you're going to, harass her. We're going to harass you. So they started stopping them for anything. You don't have a light on your bike. You jaywalked.
Yeah.
I mean, things that you don't want to worry about. You don't, as officers, you just go about your day and turn a blind eye to a lot of things. Not anymore. They were on them. And that's when they're like, all right, you're part of a bigger gang now. Like we're going to have to lay off of you. And come full circle, I'm now with the police department, like, I don't know, maybe 8 years or so. We're doing our morning routine at the schools, traffic control and stuff. And we're out there, making sure all the kids are okay. My coworker, who is an officer, is across the street from me. And she sees me. She goes, Yolanda, you turned white. So I see her, the girl that I hurt. So she comes up and I'm like, here I am, full uniform. I have taser. I'm bulletproof vest. Everyone knows, I'm with law enforcement, and I'm shaking like a leaf. I am scared out of my mind. And I'm like, well, I have the upper hand now. But that trauma, right, that doesn't leave you.
It doesn't.
You end up feeling like that little girl in 6th grade again. And she comes up to me, but I know she's going to be okay because she's got her daughter on, one of her younger daughters on her hip. She's dropping off her older one. And I thought, okay, this can't get totally bad. Well, I look at my coworker across the street, and she raises me on the radio. She's like, hey, you 10-4? Are you code 4? Meaning, are you all right? And I said, yeah, 10-4 I am. But she knew something was going on, So she comes up to me. She apologizes. Now that she's a mom, things are happening with her kids, and she's starting to see what her kids are dealing with. And, she said, I found God, and, I want to come and apologize. And I thought, here I am. I should be apologizing to you. I hurt you. And so I apologize for hurting her because I permanently disfigured her. And we just had a really healing moment. Now, granted, all of them have not done that. I had one other girl apologize to me, who was part of it, in a roundabout way.
Mm-hmm.
But she was the only one who actually came up to me and just flat out, I'm sorry for what I did to you, for what we did.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow.
It just took that life experience and the understanding to be able to, you know what, that probably wasn't cool what I did
Right.
back
We
then.
grow up,
Yeah, you grow
right?
up.
We grow up and we start to see we have a bigger worldview. We have more empathy, especially when we become moms.
Mm-hmm.
We have a totally different outlook.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that really started. The nightmares stopped after that. I had them all the way up to that point. Um, and I just can't thank her enough for actually doing that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
If you can go back in time, what would you do differently in order to kind of resolve the problem a little quicker?
That's a hard one. I don't know if it could have been because, like I said, at the time, they just didn't think gangs were an issue. They didn't think bullying was bullying yet. It was kind of like, oh, kids will be kids.
Mm.
And so we didn't really have a name for it yet back then. We didn't, like now, what a bully is and
Yeah.
things. It just really wasn't talked about. So I don't know if I could. It's almost like I had to go through those things for change to happen. I would probably say just use my voice sooner. You know, be confident in the fact that you can make a difference. And I probably should have done it a lot sooner instead of, but you're so scared,
Yes.
at the time, and you don't know what your rights are,
Mm-hmm.
right? As a young kid and as a parent for my mom, never going through that, we didn't know what our rights were. We didn't know that, hey, they're going against school policy. We can demand, them to be suspended or expelled. There's all these avenues. So it's hard to say, what I would do differently. It's just one of those things I think I had to go through.
Yeah, it's sort of difficult to say because it's such a complex issue. It's dealing with other people's problems, and there's so many there are internal and external factors that affect them to the way that they are. Because at the end of the day, we're all walking defense mechanisms, and so their defense mechanisms just ended up hurting you a little bit,
Yeah.
right? So that's that. Thank you for sharing that story. I'm pretty sure Gabby has a couple questions that she wants to ask.
I know. So you spoke about, your story a little. So we're gonna go ahead into the impact of bullying. I know that you mentioned that it impacted you with your social life, with your health, all of that stuff. So my question would be the effects of it, and you tapped into that already. Your school performance, all of that. Good thing you were a straight A student, and that in a sense it would affect you, right?
Oh, yeah.
And just your ulcers and your health and that anxiety. And even back then we wouldn't even call it anxiety, right? We were
Right.
just like, oh, it's just my stomach hurts, I feel queasy or whatnot, or I want to throw up. I went through some similar stuff like that, so I totally understand it. But back then, we were just like, let's just get through it or whatnot, right? So then sometimes the effects of bullying linger, right? For years. Do you still see the effects of it at times? Does something trigger them at times for you?
Yeah. You know, it's sad, but I'm proud that I got over this. What I'm just going to say is I almost had, I hated being Mexican because it was the Mexicans who were doing this to me, my own people. So I started despising myself.
Kind of like a self-hate.
So, yes, absolutely. So I had chopped my hair short. I didn't want to have long hair like them. I didn't want to look like them anymore. But then my grandparents quickly snapped me out of that and was like, Mija, just because, and again, I might not speak fluent Spanish because at the time growing up in Livermore, it was different times. You had, my grandpa actually kept it in his shed. a little sign that one of the businesses had outside. It said, "No shirt, no niggers, no spics, no service." That's what we grew up with, right? In an affluent white, predominantly white community, we had a lot of racism back then. And so my grandparents made the cognizant decision to not teach their children Spanish because they didn't want that accent and that racism towards them. Right. My grandpa worked 3 jobs to live on the white side of town. Okay. So I remember my grandpa apologizing for that later and saying, "I did you a disservice." And I said, "No, Grandpa, you were protecting your family, what you thought was right." And I said, "I can learn Spanish." And then I started realizing when I started taking those college classes, I love college compared to high school. It opens your worldview. You start to feel confident in your culture. You learn about your culture more. And I said, you know what? Just because I don't speak it fluently, but we still make tamales on Christmas. We wake up to Vicente Fernandez, with the cleaning. We do all of those things that our culture does. We celebrate the holidays. It's all about family. And and I started becoming proud again, right? And I started wanting to learn more about my culture.
That's wonderful.
So it's that lingered for a long time, right? The watching your back. I never forget the training I had in law enforcement. One day they were training us on always face the door, never have your back to the door, right? Because I said, well, I already do that. I've been doing that since 6th grade. Yeah. So I always doing the 360, always knowing who's around you, where your exits are. Because if they were coming at me, I needed to know where I needed to get out.
Yeah.
So all of that, kind of lingers.
Definitely.
Yeah, you see a group of just Latinas around you, and you start to freak out because you're like hyperventilating. You're like, are those them? Or could they be their cousins? Are they going to do anything to me? So you just never felt comfortable, But lingering now, no, I think I can honestly say I'm at peace. It's taken a long time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, in what ways do you think bullying affects not only you as an individual, but the communities and social environments? I know you spoke about that as well, but in communities and in environments that you're at, how does that affect?
I think for my experience, it was really bringing education and awareness to the community, because they're like, oh, that's not our town, not our nice city.
Isn't happening.
And it's not happening. And it's like, yes, it is, if you just listen. So getting those right individuals in the right positions to listen, to hear you, to take kids serious.
Yeah.
They're kids, but they have a lot going on.
Yeah.
And we need to listen more, and we need to make it a safe environment for them.
Yeah, get to the bottom of things.
Yeah.
And take the time and the patience. Oftentimes it gets swept under the rug because it's like, oh, I'm too busy. Or this is going to be time consuming. But if they would only stop and not listen, but listen to understand what is really going on. Right?
Yeah.
So we're going to transition over to transformation and healing.
That's the best part.
So I'll go ahead and continue, if you don't mind, Derek. So everyone heals differently. What was the turning point for you? And when did you start to feel like you were healing from your experience? So what was the turning point for you?
A little bit of college. I started feeling empowered. I started feeling like, okay, as a teenager, your whole world is school, your neighborhood. You don't realize there's more to life eventually, right? No one's going to care when you work, a different company, a different city, you're commuting. No one cares where you came from. They care about your performance and what kind of person you are. And so I started seeing that. I started saying, well, wait. My most important world, that's not going to matter soon. So I started realizing they're not going to matter to me much anymore. And so that started kind of the process. I became an adult. I mean, really, I got married, I had kids, and all of that was my healing, because I'm like, there's so much more to life. You know, as teenagers, we don't realize you're just here. It's about me, me, me. The world revolves around me. You don't realize you have the rest. You're only a kid for so long. You're an adult for a lot longer.
Yeah.
And so realizing that and starting to see, oh, I have a lot of life to live. And that's just a little piece of my story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, just kind of gradual healing.
And was there someone or something that helped you overcome the trauma caused by bullying? Like you mentioned, you got married, you had kids. Did you speak to your husband about it? I'm sure your family knew, and maybe your family would bring it up or something, or maybe you would bring it up, but did he know, like, when you guys got together? Like, was he your high school sweetheart, or where did you meet him?
No. I did have a high school sweetheart, but it wasn't him. We actually met at a car show. I ended up a lot of my I couldn't go out, right, like a normal teenager. So I ended up having an obsession with cars. My dad was a mechanic, my stepdad growing up. And I was like, you know what? This is something I can do at home and be safe. So I had a Euro lowrider, and I went to all the lowrider shows and started fixing up my car and got really into that. And so I actually met him at a car show. We hit it off, and I up front, because that if you're going to come, and he was outside of Livermore, come to visit me and we're around town, you need to know there are people that don't like me, and that you need to be, if I need to leave, if, I look freaked out, if someone comes up to me and maybe now, because I'm bringing, my feeling was, if you're around me, I might be a danger to you.
Gotcha.
Right? So I always was very upfront, yeah.
That's good. So that's how you kind of put him up on, like what was going on with your life. Okay. And in your journey of healing or transformation, did forgiveness play a role? I know you mentioned you saw the girl and you guys, talked it out and whatnot. Whether forgiving others or even yourself.
So I think it was easier for me to forgive her because she came to me and apologized. That was, took a lot. And I respect that. I still really couldn't get over the other girls. Like, it took me a long time. Just because I felt like I lost out on my childhood. They took so much from me. They dictated everything, So I was really bitter for a while. It took me a while as I grew more as an adult and started becoming more into my faith. I started realizing, you know what? It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Don't hold on to that because it festers. I still was having nightmares. I would get mad like easily, frustrated. And I was like, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
And forgiving them doesn't mean I accept what they did.
Right. No, totally.
And it's just like, you know what? I can move past that.
Yeah.
And I can, because I ended up as an adult seeing they were unhappy.
Yeah.
To bully, to take that much time and effort, they were totally unhappy in some, whatever part of their life.
Right.
And they ended up having a lot of bad things happen to them. It's that karma thing or however you want to call it. And so I just started realizing I'm living a really good life, and I don't need to hold on to that.
Yeah. Have you ever spoken to your child, to your little girl child, and been like, it's okay?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's
You
good
have
healing
to.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you so much. So then we're going to transition over to advice for listeners, and I'll let Derek take that.
Okay, so we obviously made this podcast so that we can bring awareness, but to also help and prevent bullying from happening to the people that are listening to this podcast. So if you could just give our advice to our listeners right now of someone currently experiencing bullying, what advice would you give them?
Document everything.
Okay.
in
Get it.
school or an adult work.
Yes.
That happens all the
It's
time.
it right? As an adult, we go through it. I think I wouldn't let it happen to me now because of my situation.
Yeah.
But I can see where it could happen. But I would say the most important thing is to document everything. If you have things recorded, keep it. Write dates, times, who they were, what happened. Notify the authorities. If you're especially if you're in school, go to your principal. Go to your counselor. If the police say, well, they didn't really break a law doing whatever they were doing, there's things called citizen report forms. It's just documented, and it's nice to have that paper trail. You never know when you're gonna need it.
Yeah.
Tell teachers, tell so they understand you're going through something. They might be a little bit more able to have eyes and to pay closer attention. Sometimes I think as adults we're so busy and we're just wrapped up and we're not really watching. So speak up, talk to the yard duties, the campus supervisors, all of those people. Tell your friends, don't keep it from your parents. Make sure you tell, if you have a pastor, if you have a 4-H leader, Girl or Boy Scouts, whatever adults that you trust, tell them. Don't keep it inside.
Yeah. Let as many people aware as possible,
Absolutely.
basically.
Yeah.
Okay. So now flipping it to the other side, we're giving advice to the victims of bullying, but what about to people who recognize that they are the bully and they're listening to this?
Wow. Well, if you're recognizing that you're a bully, that's a huge step, right? I'd probably ask them, look inward and ask, why are you doing these things? Are you getting bullied? Sometimes the bully is the victim. What's going on in your life that you want to single that person out and make their life miserable? How is that going to benefit you? And realizing as adults later on in life, we need to band together. We need to be lifting each other up, in our own culture as women. We need to be there for each other. I think natural disasters, like say, 9/11, COVID, these huge things that happen to us, we quickly realize we need each other, and I'm Christian and I believe, God says we need to help and protect each other and treat each other as Jesus loved us. So, just look inward and kind of ask, what's going on? Is there something that you're unhappy with that's going on with you? And seek help too. It's okay to talk to people. I love that we're growing up now in a generation that recognize mental health, that know words like anxiety and things like that. We didn't have that. So there's no reason for you to keep things inside. There's so many resources out there. Maybe it's just you haven't found your people. Maybe, you need an outlet, whether it be art, hiking, sports, poetry, whatever the case may be. Find an outlet that you're good at and you're passionate about, and find what you love, and you're going to be a much happier, fulfilled person.
Yeah. Especially at a young age, a lot of younger people struggle to find identities, and what ends up happening is that they end up becoming like tribal, where they click up, and then now that group's identity is their own because they
Yes.
haven't found their own, and sometimes that group doesn't do that well for them.
Right.
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 So like it's like that famous saying that says hurt people, but in order for you to heal from that, you have to look within and do a lot of reflecting. and
Yes.
and it's you have to put yourself in a place of isolation a little bit to really work on yourself.
Yeah. And what's that one saying? If you surround yourself, the 3 closest people to you, you're going to become
The
like
average of
them,
them.
the average of them. And so, yeah, I would challenge people, find a group, find your people, you know, like you were saying, if that group isn't doing it for you, find someone else,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you'll start to see that. As I would say, you know, the teenagers out there, you you're going to grow up, you know, each year you're going to become closer to yourself. You're going to know yourself more. The more experiences that you have, the more positive people that you surround yourself with, it'll all work out. Yeah,
It's all time.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, what can friends, family, or even coworkers do to support someone who is being bullied?
Just be there. Listen to them. Don't judge. You know, ask those questions though, like, you know, do you feel safe? Are they physically hurting you? Give them resources. Just be there for them, encourage them, build them up, you know, be positive around them because they need that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're let them know they matter and that this world needs them in it,
Mm,
because the thoughts of suicide are real.
yes.
Like you already have your hormones and all this stuff going on as a teenager, and then you have this huge traumatic. Bullying is trauma, and you know it's little bits here, but it ends up consuming you, and those, you know, those thoughts race through, you know, your mind. And so I would encourage, you know, family and friends to ask, you know, are you okay? You know, how are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And that we love you and that you matter and that this is going to pass,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll help you through it.
An encouraging word can go a very long way for someone
Absolutely.
going and through a very dark time like that.
Yeah.
How do you think that schools and workplaces can better address bullying and its consequences?
Oh, zero tolerance. It has to be a zero tolerance. Uh, I was so happy to hear recently that PHS in Creekside had Challenge Day come out.
Mm-hmm.
That's a well-known
Yes.
organization. More of those. We need we need that daily. We need to talk about these things daily. It's got to be kindness. I just feel like we just don't have that kindness towards each other anymore, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Tolerance of each other's differences. Knowing, you know, we're more alike than we are different. And I think the more that teens and young kids see that and have that over and over in school, I think it's just going to make it a better,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and and having that system where you're like, okay, if we're going to take these things serious, they're not to be played around with, and when things happen, there's going to be zero tolerance. A lot of, you know, calling the parents, having the meetings, you know, having those. You don't have to go straight to suspension or expulsion, of course, but there should be some things that they have to do, you know, maybe some classes they have to take,
Yeah.
right?
To address the issue.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because if nothing gets done about it, like a suspension or a expulsion can make the problem even worse.
Exactly.
And I'm glad that you had brought up Challenge Day because I remember because I went to PHS too, um, many years ago, and I remember Challenge Day. I didn't myself participate, but I remember seeing all these kids going to the auditorium or they had it in the gym or something like that, and then when they would come back, they were just like changed,
Oh yeah.
and it was so weird because I would see that these kids felt like like love radiating
Yes.
from them, and then
Absolutely.
like the bullying that was happening had stopped,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw like these kids sticking up for each other, and I'm like, what happened here?
Yeah.
There's a
It,
big impact on that.
oh,
I
it's intense.
volunteered. I
Mm-hmm.
volunteered at Creekside, and it just impacts them to the point that it shakes them up.
Yes.
Why? Because you see the vulnerability of other kids that are going through these things, and other kids don't know that these kids
Yep.
are going through these things. So when they're sitting there crying and they tell their story, then others are just like, Wow.
Yeah.
Like, I did not know you were going through that. Or even the bullies themselves are like, I'm sorry to my teacher. I'm sorry to you. I didn't know I hurt you. And, it's very impactful.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up.
You start to see quickly in that program, everyone has gotten hurt.
Yeah.
Everyone, even the bullies,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're like, wait, we're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
You felt it too. You
You're
felt
just
like
like
that.
me.
Right. And having more of those type of opportunities, I think would go a huge long way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you for sharing your
Yeah.
story. Thank you for sharing your insight. We're going to be moving on to our closing remarks. So our co-host is going to be taking that away for us.
So as we wrap up, we just want to thank you so much for coming and sharing your story so openly with us, and of course the public. And I think with this, a lot of people can learn a whole lot from your process, your journey, and the way you dealt with it, and the way, in a sense, sometimes you still deal with it, right? Your kids know about it. So thank you for that, and thank you for trying to make a difference in our community, in your new community here in Patterson. So we just appreciate you coming out, and we have a goodie bag for you as well. We've
Ooh.
partnered with different sources and
Aw.
resources. So the Saluna app is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, California versus Hate has a lot of resources. Our friends in Stanislaus County, the DA Attorney's Office, Victim of
Wow.
Crime, all of these partners that are willing to give us these resources for our community. So we thank you so much, and we're so grateful for you
Oh,
and
thank
having you.
you.
And remember, if you'd like to share your story, guys, reach out to us. And thank you, Yolanda, for just sharing
Well,
and
thank
being
you for
open.
having me. This was awesome.
You're welcome.
Good
Thank you
luck to
so much.
everything.
Thank you. So that's all from us. Derek, thank you so much. And this is your bully story at The Kindness Knot. Thank you, guys.
See
Thank
you
you,
guys.
Yolanda.